right. Welcome to Sideline Psych with your hosts, Jordan and Riley, where we're going to be bringing you the latest and greatest in sports psychology and sport performance. We're here to tell you a little bit about us, how we got here, and what we're here to bring you all.
Hey man, yeah, let's get into it. This is gonna be a great show for you guys to watch, and this is gonna really be a psychology show. And so I'm gonna introduce you to my brother Jordan, soon to be known as Dr. J. So
One and
Jordan,
only.
tell me about your upbringing, how you got into this, and what made you want to do something like this.
All right. So let's start off. First things first, I'm an athlete, bruh.
I mean, you're an athlete, but it's a little tough being an athlete in a family like this, and having to just take the back seats so often. Our one-on-one games are pretty telling of themselves. I'm not even gonna put the score on the blast like that, but
Look, he got me in my 30s. My knees are bad. I don't know what to do about that. But I will say, I am a pro athlete.
Oh no, can't beat that. He is a pro athlete, and honestly, if we're talking about the family, like probably will have the longest tenure as a pro athlete as well, if we're being serious.
Yeah. Pretty much after I stopped playing basketball, we'll get into how that happened. I started racing cars, and I do rally racing now. I've done a little bit of Formula cars, karting, touring cars, but that's how we're starting it off, is that I'm an athlete. And that's where started my passion to get into the sports psychology world. So let's rewind about age 14, 15. And I was done playing basketball. Riley can attest, our other brother can attest, is that it's a different type of household when your dad is a pro athlete. There's a different level of expectations. And as great as he is as a coach and all that kind of stuff, and he can teach you everything, when you're the oldest, he's still learning too how to teach, right?
Yeah.
So I got a lot of just unfiltered adult athlete who played at the highest level, and it ended up causing a little bit of a burnout for me.
No, we always talk about it in our house. Jordan was the sacrificial lamb to allow me to continue to play basketball, because I promise if I was subjected to the same type of training, I would not be playing basketball at this moment. I would have been done probably many years ago. Jordan got definitely the brunt of whatever, and obviously people learn as they go along. So now, obviously, like I still get some intense coaching or whatever.
Yes.
You know how I go, but it ain't nowhere near what they was doing. Like nowhere near. Like we probably gonna in this show, you'll probably hear some good stories from back in the day of some training stories. But hey, man. He paved the way for us. Especially for Trey. Trey got a little bit less. Trey
got a good amount still. So, but that little bit of difference, like, I think me stopping playing was actually the shock. Like it was just like, oh, let me back up a little bit.
Yeah, no, because if you'd have kept playing, then it's been like, oh yeah, like they can do this. They just don't want to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like no, because honestly, really that training, that little difference in intensity was the difference between a 14-year-old burnout and a Division I player. Because like, if we're really being honest, like natural athlete, Jordan's the best natural athlete in the family. Like Jordan's the type of dude, he could be not having picked up a weight, picked up a ball, pick up anything in like 2 months, and then he gonna come out and drop 40 in a pickup game. Like it's like that kind of thing. Some people just get it, and some people just got it. Jordan always just had it. Now, me and Trey, we were a little different. We weren't necessarily as good at things when we first picked them up, but Jordan always just had it. And I think a lot of times Pops would see that, and he was like, "Oh yeah, we got to harness this and get it to be perfect." But hey, that's why we're here. Because mental health is important in sports and how it can make you go forward.
So I don't think I've ever told anyone this about how I actually ended up quitting basketball. Because I didn't want to say outright that I'm done playing. Like I had brought up a little bit that I was like getting tired and like burnt out and all that kind of stuff. Not in those words. Those are, bringing it back. But it started, moving from California to Texas. I was playing at Christian Brothers in 9th grade, and they really wanted me to try out and play for Reagan. Dale had set up the tryouts, even though I was late. He sent them over the stuff. He's like, no, he's going to be really good for your team. But at that point, I was done. I was mad that we're moving to Texas, and I was just like, I don't want to do it. But they got me to try out. So the only way I felt like I could get out of basketball was to throw my tryout.
No, you did not throw the tryout, bro.
That was the only way I could think about it.
No, okay. See, this is the thing. This is the thing about Jordan. Another thing, also being a great natural athlete. If Jordan don't want to do something, he's not doing it. Like, he's just not. There's no chance. There's no point in arguing. It's one thing. It took me a long time to learn that. It took my mom a long time to learn that. Like, I've seen him look at the same plate of food for a week on end because he didn't want to eat the vegetables that was on the plate because he's like, I'm not eating it. I don't like that. Like, that's
broccoli's gross. But kids, eat your broccoli. Eat your broccoli, kids. But like, I understand your pain. I understand your pain.
Yeah, no, real talk.
So, going back to the tryout, I was just like, I'm going to throw this tryout. So I was literally pulling up from curry range, and I made some. Like, I made some. I had to make sure people knew I could still kind of do something. But I wasn't passing. Like, I wasn't playing no defense, and I was just like, nah, I'm done. So I was just pulling, and then the coach came and told me, he's like, I expected you to be a lot better after kind of getting hyped up, and I was like, I just wasn't feeling it. He's like, you didn't make team. I was like, dang. I dedicated my life to this.
Can't believe
I might have to just
stop playing basketball. Oh gosh. Jeez.
Yeah. And that's how pretty much it happened. Fast forward, I probably wasn't in the realm of basketball, except for when I was working as a ball boy for the Spurs. I did that for 2 years from 16 to 18, which was great. But it felt more like a job. But I was probably out of basketball for about 5 or 6 years. Didn't even want to watch basketball. Didn't want to talk about basketball. And one day something clicked and I was like, I miss it. And it's because it was such a huge part of my life. So it was like, I couldn't go away from it. Like, as much as I tried to get away from it, I truly do love basketball. I love everything about the game, and I love the relationships that it builds. So I was scouting for a little bit, and I remember I was scouting our brother's game, and I was talking to him about his injury and all that kind of stuff, and I was asking him about supports and all that kind of stuff, and he pointed out there wasn't that much in the way of support on a mental health perspective. They did all the physical stuff, but there wasn't really anyone necessarily to talk to about mental health. So at that time, I kind of decided that I liked scouting, but I didn't love scouting. Like, I enjoyed watching all the basketball, but I felt like I wanted to do more. And I saw, I kind of had a little bit of future sight that the NBA was going to start moving towards mental health because it's so important. And I started researching the German national soccer team on how they got into sports psychology and how it helped them win, I think, four international titles. So I got really interested in that, decided to go to school for psychology. And then I got my master's in counseling psychology, and I've been practicing sports psychology and with at-risk youth for the past 2 or 3 years, going into my doctoral program in sport and performance psychology, so I can take it to the next level and become the one and only Dr. J.
No, got to do that. Got to get the nickname and the moniker going.
Yeah,
that's what brings people in. No, man, because as you can see from Jordan's story, is like a big part of his story was how his mental health deteriorated the way he was able to appreciate a sport that he actually loved. And, in a sport like basketball, where the culture is work as much as you can, as hard as you can, for as many hours, as many days, no breaks, be mentally tough, whatever that necessarily means. And and all those things. You're just supposed to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and figure it out. And as we move forward as a society, that's not really where sports should be. And if we really want the best performance on the field, on the court, or whatever sport you're playing, we need to take the mental health into account, because the brain's a muscle, just like everybody else, just like everything else in there.
So that brings me into, mental toughness. And we're going to talk about you right now, Riley. I'm going to give you a little bit of intro. Riley might be one of the most mentally tough athletes I've ever seen in my life. He'll go into his injury.
Thank you.
He'll go into his injury, and from outside looking in, and even being right next to him, I saw how that affected how he approached the game, how he looked at the game, how he internalized what it meant to be a mentally tough athlete and be able to take time for himself in stride, despite all the obstacles he had to go through. I don't want to give away too much of your story, so bring me in. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit. So basically, what Jordan's referring to, I like to refer to myself as an adaptive athlete. A lot of people will talk about how disabilities can change how you can perform on the floor. And, I didn't want to ever think of myself as disabled. I wanted to think of myself as adaptive. That was a word that I got at the brachial plexus camp, which is the camp for the injury that I actually have. So I have brachial plexus injury. That was basically a nerve damage injury when I was born that broke down my nerve system inside of my entire right arm, where my biceps would pull up sometimes. They'd have nerve pain and my arm would be bent up in weird and different ways, right? But I grew up in this house, right? And you really think I'm gonna let Jordan bust my butt in basketball? There's no way. I'm gonna figure it out how to play. So growing up in this house, I got to see a lot of people that really put their time into the sport. And being in a real basketball family where we had access to seeing these high level athletes all the time was really helpful for me. So I'll take it back to a story that I really think is the catalyst in my basketball career. So it was around 2007, and we were living in San Antonio, Texas. Our dad, Dale Demps, was working for the Spurs. He was the director of pro player personnel, and I just got another surgery on my arm. And basically I had my whole shoulder turned in. So now I could before I could dribble, but I couldn't really dribble. I could shoot, but I couldn't really shoot. It was I couldn't really hold the ball right. All these things that wouldn't really work because my arm was turned out backwards, right?
Yeah, it was tough for a while. I remember you dribble like this, and I was like, that's not gonna work.
No, that's getting ripped. If I dribbled how I did back then, it was getting ripped. So shout out to Dr. Garbahi, shout out to Dr. Romeo, because they hooked me up, got my shoulder looking nice. Well, nice as it can be, right? So nice as it can be. So after that, I came to the practice facility, and I had just learned how to dribble with my right hand, but I was like, dang, I can barely do it. I can't dribble as hard as I can with my left hand. It's not the same. I don't know if I'm gonna be really able to play. And my dad was like, come here. So he brought me in his office, sat me down, put some film on the TV, right? So I'm looking up at the TV, and he's showing me a bunch of film of guess who? Manu Ginobili, right? Manu Ginobili is sitting there, and he's like, I want you to watch Manu Ginobili when he drives to the rim. What does he do? He never touches his right hand. Never touches his right hand. He'll maybe tap it one time or something, and boom, that's it. So if you really want to be good at basketball, you don't need to be pounding it, tween, dribble, step back, all that. You don't need to do all that. Just in and out crossover. Jordan knows it.
I gotta stop you right there, because the whole in and out crossover thing for 99% of the players, that is not true. I just want to point that out. When I hit my development as a player is when I realized I was like, yo, I can go between my legs too? Behind the back?
No, bro. You got to remember this. Because our dad, he is 6'5", 230, right? If he's a point guard, right? Yeah. If he needs to get to the rack, he can do it in and out, and he go get to the rack.
Yeah.
If you need to do an in and out crossover, he gonna get to the rack. Me, I'm 6'2", I'm a little frail, I'm like a little, whatever. Listed at 6'3" on the website, but 6'2" for real.
With shoes, with
like,
shoes.
with shoes.
Yeah.
So, but when I get to the rim, I was gonna need to do that. So growing up, anyway, that's all to tell you is that growing up, I had to take on this mentality that I was just gonna have to do it differently than other people. And when I would go to these tournaments and things like that, the things that these parents would be saying when I would be tearing their little kid up that can't guard nobody, and they'd be like, "Force him right, you're gonna let him go right." Like I'm like, they're going crazy. I've seen like parents actually like beating their kids on the side because I just put 20 on their head, like they're 10-year-old kids. And those types of things had effect on me because I really was like, dang, these parents are looking at me like I should have no business being on the court, have no business being on the field, because I played a lot of sports growing up. And I kind of just had to take on this villain mentality of being like, forget everybody. And, Trae Young, a lot of times people have been talking about Trae Young, how he looks back in New York. Like that's how it was almost at every tournament.
Mm-hmm.
It was like people didn't necessarily want me to succeed. So a lot of times I just kind of had to be like, F everybody, I'm going to figure it out. And that's kind of where a lot of my mental toughness came from. And I had a good base because my parents were always very supportive of like me trying to figure it out. But it was all about not necessarily proving everybody wrong, but it was about proving me right. And I had to prove myself right that I can do this. And I had to have a lot of mantras. A lot of times, there was a lot of nights where I was crying, thinking I couldn't do it. But, when I go out on the court and I go to these camps and I see a lot of these kids who have similar problems with me, that's all that really that's what keeps me going. And that's what really makes me think like, I got to keep doing this. I got to figure it out and try to figure out a way and be solution based. And that's really my story as an athlete, is just trying to figure it out and being the villain. That's kind of me.
Yeah, no, I actually love like every time you tell that story, because when I was younger, I don't think I even realized it. I don't think Trae realized it. I think a lot of us didn't realize it because when you came home, you were just Riley. You didn't have a brachial plexus injury. You were just Riley. I joked around with you, but like I don't think I ever actually saw you as any different. And I never even saw you as less of a basketball player. So it's just like, managing what it's like on the inside versus the outside was actually really eye-opening for me. And I read some of like your speeches that and letters that you wrote in like your senior and junior high school. And I was just like, I remember sitting there, I was like, whoa. I was like, I didn't even think about it that way, because it was just like, this is Riley.
This is how it was.
Yeah.
And honestly, and this is the thing too, it's like, that's helped me. The fact that you guys didn't treat me like I was like some disabled nobody that can't do anything. A lot of times that helped me, because like I come home and Jordan talked about him being an athlete. One of his athletic endeavors was Kung Fu and Wing Chun Kung Fu, right? And see, look, he got the boxing thing on his neck. But see, when you would come home, Jordan would beat me up like, bro, I needed to call DPS the way he used to put some of these new moves. He'd be like, hey man, I just learned the peeking duck. You want to see it, Riley? And he come and beat my butt. I'm trying to fight him off. Like, I'm not worried about my arm. He's not worried about my arm. I'm trying to win. And then like that culture of just feeling normal at home gave me a lot of the fortitude to be able to go out into the world and be like, I can handle all this. I can handle these parents that don't understand what I'm dealing with. I can handle these coaches that don't understand it and whatever. And I'm just going to figure it out.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we both got to share our stories. Today, we just talked about a little bit about ourselves. I want to ask you one question before we go. What mantra was the most important for you in your mental health and basketball development?
The most important is I've been here before. I've been here before. I would say that to myself a lot when I was in situations where I didn't necessarily know if I was good enough, if I was fast enough, tall enough, strong enough. All those things that creep into your mind at the end of games and whatever were a lot of times highlighted because I knew everybody in the gym didn't think I could do it either. So I had to sit there and sit back and be like, I've been here before. I've been the most hated man in the gym. I've had people not believe me before. And guess what? And I've proved them wrong before. And I can try to do it again. And I might not necessarily do it every time, but I've been here before. I can definitely do this. So that was definitely the one.
Wow. That's a lot of, mental skills training. And we're definitely going to talk about that as our episodes go on. Thank you, Riley, for being my co-host. Thank you for being my brother. And thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me on. We finna have fun, bro.
Let's go.
Let's go.